Easy Season 3 just kicked off, and the Life of Pablo live stream is supposed to be happening right now.
Loren's face is like...
Yeah, the Life of Pablo is supposed to be live streaming right now in title. I'm hearing, this is live information being piped into my skull, that there are problems with that stream. So if you're taking a break from it to see what we're up to, thank you for that. Hopefully you won't tune back once the stream starts, because we want to keep your attention for the next hour undivided. Actually, Andrew, our producer, and I were joking earlier that we should just put picture-in-picture. We should have Easy Season 3 picture-in-picture, and then have the Life of Pablo kind of playing in the background this entire
I like that idea. I also like that. I mean, we're about to talk about a really crazy scientific discovery.
We are.
And that happened today, yet live streaming and video conferencing are still like the biggest trash fires in technology. Like, it's 2016 and we can't figure those two things out.
Why did Albert Einstein have to spend his time working on this theoretical nonsense when he could have been solving the real problems of our day, like live streaming?
It's ironic because the live stream announcing the scientific discovery today also cut out.
Oh my God.
Shocker.
And it was more momentarily pulled from because YouTube is so twitchy about its copyright claims.
Also, they changed the name of gravitational waves like 4 times before the actual announcement. Speaking of gravitational waves, we should get right into it. So you may have caught the announcement this morning. It was at 10:30ish, right?
Yes.
That they've discovered these waves for real this time.
For real.
Loren, why don't you tell us about that?
So this was a concept put forth by Albert Einstein about a century ago. It's part of his theory of general relativity. And basically everybody thought they existed. There really was no doubt about it. Well, there may be some, but not a lot. But no one could. It's
like, how much faith do we actually put in Albert Einstein is the question, right?
I mean, it's a lot of faith. I mean, his theory has stood up against the test of time and, tons of testing in general.
What is time anyways?
Yeah, what is time? What is space-time?
Well,
let's get really existential about this.
What a great question to ask. We have a delightful video that kind of explains this whole gravitational wave nonsense and what space and time really are. So if we can play that. Let's go.
Roll that.
Let's check that out.
Scientists say they have found evidence for gravitational waves for the first time ever. The discovery was made by a group of researchers called LIGO, and if it's true, it marks one of the biggest scientific finds in decades.
Big day for LEGO.
Gravitational waves are considered ripples in space-time. What is space-time? Let's try to visualize it by imagining it as this blanket. Yes, we're compressing 4 dimensions into 3. A smaller object on the blanket's surface doesn't change the shape all that much. It will just roll straight across. But if you place a bigger object with more mass on the blanket's surface, it warps the overall shape much more significantly and affects other passing objects. This is basically how gravity works in our universe. Objects seem attracted to each other, but really they follow the curvatures of space-time created by the presence of other larger objects. Now let's switch things up a bit. Instead of a blanket, imagine space-time as a pool of water. If you move an object through the pool, it causes a ripple effect outward. A similar scenario happens when large masses move throughout the universe. They produce gravitational waves that warp space-time. Everyone basically agrees that gravitational waves exist, but nobody has been able to prove them. In fact, the movement of every object in the universe supposedly produces these waves, but they're usually way too weak to be observed. So to find them, the scientists at LIGO looked for the biggest ones out there. That means observing 2 super dense black holes merging far away. This huge explosive event generates enormous waves that can be picked up by LIGO's observatories. Each facility is shaped like a giant L. The arms are vacuum-sealed tubes 2.5 miles long. At the end of each arm is a mirror. When the gravitational waves pass the mirrors, they warp space-time, making it appear that one mirror is closer than the other. The scientists can measure this phenomenon by timing how long it takes for lasers to bounce back from each mirror. The relative movement of these mirrors is incredibly slight. By the time the waves from the black holes make it to Earth, they only change LIGO's instruments by about 1/10,000th the size of a proton. that means these measurements are incredibly difficult to detect and are very susceptible to error. Plus, the science community has been burned before on gravitational waves. In 2014, scientists studying the early universe said they had found evidence for the waves, but later it turned out the measurements were just the result of cosmic dust. But finding gravitational waves is still a huge deal. It confirms the last big part of Einstein's theory of relativity that has yet to be proven. It could also open up a whole new way of studying our universe. Before now, we haven't been able to see objects like black holes or neutron stars because they are way too faint. But we could use gravitational waves to study these objects more directly than ever before.
So I want to get into this a little more, but first, can I just say science is insane?
I cannot believe you guys compressed 4 dimensions into 3. How dare you?
Oh my God.
Can we talk about how genius that video is?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
it's an amazing video. Shout out to Miriam Nielsen and Phil Esposito, who shot and directed this and did some amazing animations for it. Really, like, I understood it. Just saying something. So shout out to those guys. But yeah, I mean, science is insane. We were talking about this earlier, the fact that this doesn't necessarily have immediate like you and I are not going to experience any change in our lives because of this discovery, but still the fact remains that there are these mirrors separated by thousands of miles that detected this insane thing.
A couple miles.
But they're in different parts of the country.
Oh, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
So and then this detection is how many light years away?
So it was 1.3 billion light years away, I think. Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is completely ridiculous.
So technically, the waves that they detected happened.
Yeah.
Like the explosion of the black holes happened 1.3 billion years ago, and it's just now getting to us. The effects of it are just now getting to us.
Right.
That we can measure them, and they're so slight. Like they were saying, it's 1/10,000th the size of a proton is how much it warps the space-time around these mirrors. So the fact that we can, make those measurements with that kind of, precision is just insane.
So Albert Einstein has been completely vindicated at this point. All of his theories have been proven.
Yeah.
But this isn't the end, right? Like they're going to deploy this into space somehow. They're going to...
Yeah, so the idea is, well, right now, the only way we can really look at objects in the universe is by using light of some kind of optics. But you can't do that with black holes or neutron stars. They're way too faint to see. So the idea is we can see how they manipulate the gravity around them with these gravitational waves to learn more about them and kind of see them in a different type of way.
Got it.
It's like a whole new starting point. Like you have not been able to work with, if you think of it like a medium, you haven't been able to work with this medium yet. And now that you know how to detect them and and how sensitive you need to be and everything, now you can go back out to all these places that you've been sort of pegging throughout the years of like, oh, maybe this would be a great place to detect gravitational waves, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can go back to those spots and like rework what it was that you were studying.
Right.
Which is really crazy.
One of the physicists I talked to had a really good point. It's like when we discovered radio waves or, built the first like radio telescope, we discovered all these crazy new things. So, finding a new medium for measuring the universe, we'll probably discover things we never thought were even possible.
Yeah. And that's really cool, obviously.
Yeah.
And this specific instrument or set of instruments was only at like a third its potential sensitivity, right? I mean, like
they can definitely amplify the sensitivity. So this is just the first step. You know, you need to get the confirmation out of the way to be like, okay, we've found the gravitational waves. Now the time is to keep finding them and to make our instruments more precise so that we can actually use them as a form of measurement rather than just saying that they're there.
And is this like fully peer reviewed at this point, or is that another step that they need to go through?
No, they publish their study in the physical journal. I can't remember the exact name. Physical Journal Letters or whatever.
You're saying it wasn't Us Magazine.
No, it was not Us Magazine. And so that went through peer review. It had like over 1,000 authors on it too. Wow. So a bunch of people signed off on this, and I'm sure it's going to have to face up to a lot of scrutiny. Even if it's peer reviewed, things that go through peer review aren't always correct. And a lot of people are definitely looking at this. However, it seems pretty legit. They have a lot of people on it. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed that they got everything right.
I'd like to contend that this won't change people's lives, because I think that it's this kind of stuff that makes people more interested in the science that's going on, about our Earth and about space and things like that. And when you start to go down these roads of learning about what this stuff means, it changes your perspective on everything. And I think it can change. It doesn't have that immediate impact. Like I'm not going to go to work tomorrow because there are gravitational waves now. But
that would be awesome.
You can't go buy some gravitational waves.
I'm taking a personal day
to sort of absorb what this means.
Yeah.
To absorb some waves.
Yeah.
It's
no, I agree with Sean on that. Yeah, for sure.
It's super cool that they were able to do this, and that is like the most reductionist way to talk about it. Like, oh, it's so cool. Good job, guys. Next thing, Kanye West.
But it's not. Yeah. But that being said, it is always nice when they can connect it to something real, right? Like what the implications are. And I think what makes this even more exciting than your normal scientific discovery is the fact that they don't even know how big the implications are yet, right? Because they don't know what they're going to discover, knowing that they have this new instrument available to them.
Yeah, I think, that's kind of what's so big. So it's going to change the lives of many in the scientific community. Mm-hmm. It's just not, it doesn't have an immediate impact for us right now.
Right.
But I think it definitely will have an impact on just our understanding of science and how we study it.
So I need to hype check two things. First, I need to hype check Gravity.
The movie starring George Clooney.
The movie starring George Clooney, different rating than actual Gravity.
So, by the way, speaking of the movie Gravity, I have an alternate theory of what happened in that movie.
Oh, please explain.
Yeah, go.
Explain, please.
George Clooney's character did not die.
Where'd he go?
I'm sorry if I spoiled that movie for anybody.
It's been a couple years.
Yeah, it's been a couple years.
Get on it.
I don't I think that he was actually in the cap, like he returned to the capsule.
I think that's
why
totally
because it was too
wrong.
real. It was too real.
Also, can we talk about how George Clooney did not need to die in that movie? If you're gonna have a science person on, he was flying off into space.
Yeah.
And she grabs him with one of the cords and stops his flight.
Yeah.
And instead of that would have just stopped him, and he would have just a gentle tug would have made him come back. But for some reason, some kind of invisible force was making him keep going.
Waves.
No,
it was definitely gravitational.
The unified theory of the movie Gravity has finally come together.
Yeah. George Clooney has spent 3 years waiting for vindication, and now his theory of how he died.
Okay, but if there were gravitational waves, he probably would have gone up and down in an oscillating fashion or something.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so we've gotten the hype check of Gravity out of the way.
No, wait, we didn't though.
No, that's true. Yeah, we kind of got sidetracked.
I think Kirsten wants to take over that.
I have no feeling. I refuse to hype check that movie.
Wow.
No, like the actual force of
the
gravity.
physical property.
Oh, the physical property, 10 out of 10. Very helpful.
Nice.
Very generous hype desk today.
And then hype check gravitational waves.
Wow.
Maybe 7 out of 10.
Ooh.
No.
Wow.
Wrong.
I did not see that coming.
Sorry.
You're going to have a lot of people coming
incorrect.
after you.
Do you think higher or lower?
Oh, higher. Are you kidding me? This is like inventing basically a new type of telescope. This is peak hype.
It's fair.
So like 10?
This is a 10 out of 10.
All right, so we got a 8.
So what's the average, Sean?
8.5. 8.5.
8.5.
Do math real quick.
Yeah, this math is a little beyond our pay grade. Let's move on. Can someone just check for me very quickly? Is the Yeezus live stream up yet?
Yeezus? Oh, what year are you in?
Yes, it is.
No, Yeezus season 3.
Yeezy season 3.
Yeezy, excuse me.
Jeez.
Look,
our entire staff is sitting up on the couches watching that live stream too. We are alone in a bubble.
I know Jameson is having some struggles.
Literally nobody is watching.
No one's
right
even
now.
typing in our main Slack channel.
That's really depressing.
That's how you know nothing's
either
going on.
going really well or really poorly.
That's okay. You know what? We're live to tape. We'll make an excellent show for later this evening
when
or perhaps
this
weekend
Kanye.
when you're done with Kanye.
We hope you're enjoying it tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow night. So let's talk Virgin Galactic. You're going where next week?
To the Mojave Desert next week.
The Mojave Desert, and you're going to see...
We're going to see Virgin Galactic's new spaceship. It's the replacement for Spaceship 2 after it suffered its unfortunate crash 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
Yeah. So we're going to go see that. maybe or maybe not. Stephen Hawking might be there. We don't know.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. Depends on his health, is what they're saying. So yeah, we're hopefully gonna get up and close with it. And
do we have any speculation on what we're gonna see? The kinds of changes or not changes?
I would assume it's still a similar space plane style.
Because it still connects to the Spaceship One.
It's the White Knight.
White Knight.
Yeah, White Knight 2.
Yeah.
White Knight. So it still connects to White Knight 2. They're just replacing the.
You need to learn an entire new language to understand what Virgin Galactic is doing.
Right. So yeah, some background on Virgin Galactic for people who don't know. They're not your standard rocket company. They don't make the cylindrical, vertical takeoff rockets that you normally think of when you think of rockets. They make space planes that they have to be taken up on an additional plane, which takes that space plane to a certain altitude, deploys the space plane, and then that goes into suborbital space.
And they were basically the first major private space company to burst on the scene in the early 2000s, promising, like, once this technology is ready, we're going to let everybody go to space. We're going to start by selling tickets for $250,000. All these celebrities and bigwigs decided to start buying up these tickets in advance of that promise. And then every year it was sort of like, well, we'll get to it next year. And then the next year, you'll get your ride next year. And it just kind of kept getting pushed until they finally started testing them. And then once they started testing the flights, that's when...
Did they have like a big disaster?
Yeah, they ran...
Yeah, so on
October,
Halloween, I think.
Yeah, October 2014.
Yeah, they... I remember because I was getting ready to go out.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting dressed in my costume, and that news broke, and I was like, well, this is happening now. Yeah, so what ended up happening is... Okay, so if I can explain it correctly, the spaceship has a thing called a feathering technique where it changes the position of its wings. And what happened was one of the pilots accidentally unlocked that feathering process too early. Yeah. And so it caused the wings to change position before it was at the right spot. And that kind of, I think that made the plane...
At that speed, any change in the aerodynamics is just... not good, and it wound up being not good.
So if nothing else, they would probably make that somehow safer, whether they automate that process or make it more difficult to...
I would assume it's going to be more automated, or at least protect against user error, because that was one of the things that I believe it was the NTSB board that looked into it. They concluded that the original design did not account for mishaps from the pilot themselves.
Yeah, it's been one of the biggest criticisms in the last couple of years, last year and a half since this happened, was that seems like a thing that with thorough review you should have realized we need to make sure that these like foils are locked into place and that they can only be deployed at the certain speed that they need to be deployed. And that was it's been, I think, part of the reason why it's taken them this long to unveil the new version of the plane, and even longer because it won't be for another at least couple months before they get back up in the air.
Well, it's, I'm armchair quarterbacking here a bit, but I mean, if you think about how automated a modern airliner is, why would they not seek to make an aircraft with as many critical failure points as that has as automated as possible?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is this normal of other like space launch vehicles?
That's the thing.
I mean, give humans that much control? Well,
the thing is, space launch vehicles aren't normal, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and especially ones piloted by humans.
Exactly. So they're still in a very experimental phase. The industry is, and that's kind of echoed in our legislation around it right now too. There's not a lot of regulation in terms of how the vehicles are supposed to operate, because it's still very much considered a new experimental field. And
that's definitely changing now. The sort of reins have been pulled in a little bit since Virgin had its accident, where the FAA is like at least paying more attention to these specifics.
I do agree with that. They did just pass legislation though that said that's going to extend this period of this experimental period without regulation. But I can, from what I've gathered, the FAA is a little hungry to start to step in and not go crazy with regulations, but maybe make a few adjustments.
Yeah. It's speaking of the FAA, just going to squeeze one more thing in here because if this actually goes through, it's big news. Ben Popper just wrote about this, I believe, a few minutes ago. There is some discussion of changing the rules about drone registration, so it would only apply to drones above 4 pounds, which is a very important number because the Phantom is under 4 pounds.
Yeah, most of the ones that people think about are under 4 pounds. So they're thinking about commercial drones, right?
But would they still cause damage? I feel like the ones that are under 4 pounds.
Well, that's what you said when you saw this.
That
you were
was,
like,
yes,
that thing can still mess up somebody.
Yeah, right. If
Or a
I mean,
plane.
it's if a 3.5 pound Phantom goes into a jet engine, it's still going to be a problem.
Yeah.
The idea is that they're still restricted to a certain height, right? Like
they're
400
still
feet.
they're still restricted to daytime use only below 400 feet. Of course, people aren't necessarily going to obey those rules, but the bottom line is that if this goes through, it would pretty dramatically change the landscape of who needs to register their drones and when and why. Because I don't think there are any real consumer drones that are over 4 pounds. Maybe like the Inspire 1.
Because what's the rule
Yeah, but even
now?
that's kind of prosumer.
Yeah.
Chris, what's the rule right now?
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Well, everything over half pound, I think.
Yeah, whatever those like little toy micro drones are like the only thing under the weight limit right now, basically.
That would be amazing if you had to register those. If you had to get like a little like tail number for your Palm drone.
Yeah, right.
I have a bunch of those things. I love those.
That's going to be one of the things. I mean, there's so much that we cover and so much that we don't cover that like is going to change dramatically over the next like 5 years, let alone like the next 10 years. But drones is one of those things that is going to be, I think, make radical differences in certain areas. Maybe not as like broadly reaching as we think, like drones filling the skies, but like that's one thing.
No, drones are going to fill the skies. That's the thing, right? Like if all these shipping companies get their way, there are going to be these routes of drones just nonstop all day and all night moving across the sky. So they do need to have, and Ben Popper has done a lot of reporting around this, but they need collision avoidance. They need to interface with aircraft using ADS-B or some other transponder technology. They need, they need all these things in place so that they can talk to each other and ATC knows where they are. And
is it easy to put ADS-B on a drone?
I think they've done it. I think Google and Amazon have both done it already.
As long as you don't let the people who run Kanye's live stream do it. They're not going to get it done.
It's Kanye himself. He's personally running his own live stream.
By the way, ADS-B is like the radar technology, the radar tracking technology for planes.
Right, so that they can talk to each other in the sky and back to ATC. I mean, they're just going to have to be very careful about how that goes because, again, you don't want to suck those things into a jet engine or hit them in a personal plane or with a Virgin Galactic.
No, I don't think they can get as high as Virgin Galactic space. No,
but you could see how, like, if someone was trying to film it from above and then it took out, I don't know, it could be bad news. Anyway, let's talk about Squarespace, shall we?
Sure.
Or I'm gonna talk about Squarespace.
What is Squarespace?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Sean. Building a website can be tough, and even if you do know your way around coding, creating something that looks good and works well is a time-consuming affair. Sometimes you wish you could just stop time with a simple push of a button on your watch. But Squarespace makes it easy to build beautiful websites without breaking a sweat. Squarespace provides simple, powerful, and beautiful websites that look professionally designed regardless of skill level, no coding required. Not only does Squarespace provide you with intuitive and easy-to-use tools to create websites, Squarespace also has state-of-the-art technology powering your site to ensure security and stability. And you can trust in Squarespace for your website needs when millions of people and some of the most respected brands in the world trust them too. Back in my previous life, I was an entrepreneur and craftsman selling replicas of the iconic watch from the Nickelodeon sci-fi film Clockstoppers. I would spend countless nights perfecting my recreation to exact specifications of the prop, from its yellow finish to the Quantum Tech logo display.
Okay.
Unfortunately, of course, it did not accelerate the user's molecules to speed where the world appears to be standing still. But damn, did it look good. Now, it was hard to get these bad boys off the shelf considering they weren't officially licensed. So I decided to create my own website to sell my product. It took so much work to do this. You have no idea, people. I spent almost as much time creating the website as I did creating my HyperTime technology. Squarespace would have saved countless hours of my time coding. But seriously, you can't beat the ease and simplicity of Squarespace. Squarespace gives you 24/7 online support and a beautiful website. So what are you waiting for? The announcement of Clock Stoppers 2? Come on now. Start a trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code VERGE. That's VERGE to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for Vergecast. We thank Squarespace for their support of Vergecast Squarespace. We thank Squarespace for their support of the Vergecast. You should.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
You handled that really well.
So
I am definitely way too old to have any idea what Clock Stoppers is. And I'm not that old.
That Nickelodeon movie?
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I will defend
Rotten Tomatoes
Andrew
disagrees.
and his writing on this one. It was a great movie.
The
Hype check.
Are you excited about Clock Stoppers 2? Yeah.
Oh,
Hype check Clock Stoppers
2. Oh, 11 out of 10.
I've never
Oh,
seen
Oh my
God.
god, more
Never
than
seen
gravitational waves.
Wow.
Right now, IMDb 5.2 out of 10, 29% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 40% on Metacritic.
There you go.
for
Reasons
Clock
why
Stoppers.
I probably shouldn't see it.
We need
Well-
to get the hype check in this Google card so that people can just Google stuff and know what the hype desk thinks about it.
You know, I have to say personally, and maybe y'all don't agree with me, but
Oh, boy.
personally, I find that the lower the Rotten Tomatoes score for a movie, the more I enjoy it.
No.
All right,
Absolutely. If I'm at
Example.
Yeah, give us a good example on that one.
Crank 2. Crank 2 is a phenomenal film. Probably has a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes, is my guess.
No,
Can you do a quick check?
63%.
63%?
Yes.
Wow.
Next. Wait, we got to talk about how, real quick, we got to talk about the Fast and the Furiosa. Charlize Theron might be a villain in Fast and Furious,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Can we talk about that?
I
That-
may actually watch a Fast and Furious film now.
Lauren, have you not seen the entire series?
Oh,
Hey,
man.
Chris, can we have a watch party at your house?
Heck yeah.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, Mark, let me just clarify. Every day is a watch party at my house.
Boom.
I have all the films in my Apple TV. They're available to you whenever you like.
And their extended edition?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. Only the best
God.
for my buddies.
It's on Amazon now.
Uh,
I just went down a really weird rabbit hole because you were talking about Clock Stoppers watches, and for some reason I thought about all I still really want is that back in November when the Alien watch got remade by Psycho, the
I
watch
don't
maker.
remember this at all.
Oh my God, sorry. This is a really
You're
weird
you're
tangent.
in a rabbit hole that no one else here
Yeah.
is in.
You don't remember that?
Oh, that looks awesome.
They reissued the watch from Alien, and
They
Wait,
did?
is that for sale? Can you buy that?
I don't know. It still doesn't make any sense because the site is in Japanese.
Okay,
and-
guys, I'm sorry. We're
Sorry.
buying watches now, so we can't.
sorry.
We can't do the Vergecast
No,
anymore.
Neil, I would be proud. We're buying things during the Vergecast.
Wait, yes,
Yeah.
that is a tradition.
All thanks to Squarespace.
I believe that Nilay bought his Nexus 6P during the Vergecast.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yes,
You did.
as a viewer, I can confirm.
Which
Yep.
which
Yeah.
I don't think he still uses or may even own.
I don't even think I've ever seen him hold that.
No.
You say
I-
that judgmentally, like you don't burn through tech gadgets in an afternoon.
Okay.
Okay,
But the difference
Chris
is that
at least holds them for like a day.
yes,
and uses them and
I
looks
keep
at
track
them.
of them. If I need to dispose of them, which occasionally I do, I know where they're going and when and why. Nilay probably still has that Nexus 6P and has no idea where it is my guess.
So for $386.
Okay, you buy some watches. I'm going to talk about cars.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, let's talk about cars.
This is my Vergecast now,
Sure.
and we're talking about cars.
Buckle up.
So that's
Sorry.
Goodbye, Lauren.
that is rough.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is this tentative decision from the National Highway Safety Transportation Agency Authority Association. It's NHTSA. I just know them as NHTSA. Is ruling that the Google basically a computer can be a driver. If you want to boil it way down to what's happening at a very high level. And this has broad implications for self-driving overall, because what it means, if you look at the regulatory framework right now for how cars exist and operate on U.S. roads, many of those regulations are around the very valid assumption until recently that there's a human behind the wheel. Because in 1960, why would you assume otherwise?
I feel like back then, like in 1970 or 1980, maybe you could say that. But 1960 was like when everybody was like, the future, it's going to be great. Your food will cook itself.
But Knight Rider was an 80s film.
All right, true.
Or series, rather. So the bottom line is that this means that a lot of features and knobs and bells and whistles about a car that are there for the function of interfacing with a human driver don't necessarily need to be there because they're interfacing directly with the computer instead. Now, if you extend this broad thinking that a computer can be a driver to other areas as well, you can see how this might apply to, say, liability. If you're saying that a computer can be considered a driver, or I don't know. But bottom line is that the implications go far and wide for this if it actually sticks. But that's not to say that every computer can be considered a driver. You still need to go through the testing to ensure that you actually know how to drive. A computer is no different.
Right. And you have to, I mean, these regulations still have to change state to state around the country, which is also going to take a long time.
And they're trying to harmonize.
But this could grease the wheel a bit for that, right?
What I'm curious about, though, is I know there was a whole big thing about Google's self-driving cars. They had them ready, and then they have to change them because they had to be able to have a person in the driver's seat. Yeah, does that kind of take away that requirement now?
In the long term, that's certainly the goal, is to make it so that you summon a car with an app and it pulls up and there are just 2 passenger seats, no driver's seat.
Right.
The cars that are on the road right now in Austin and Mountain View and soon in Washington State have a steering wheel. They have an emergency shutoff switch. They have pedals, and for exactly the reason you say, like, a human needs to be able to take control for both legal reasons and also because the computer software isn't finished. Mm-hmm. So, like, if the car gets itself into trouble, the human needs to be able to take over. But theoretically, long term, when they get everything sorted out, which I believe is still many, many years away, but someday they'll be in a position where they can just let the computer do everything.
So, Chris, how does this change how people are developing these driverless cars now? So, like, does this change, if Apple is hypothetically working on a car, does this change the way that they're developing? Does this just take away the steering wheel?
That's a very good question. The way I would look at it is the same way you look at, say, Uber, where Silicon Valley, being Silicon Valley, has just sort of been in the mindset of pushing forward as quickly as it can, irrespective of the regulatory hurdles that it faces. And I think that's been the case with the driverless car. They have just assumed all along that they would find a way around the rules, or they would find a way to change the rules. And so late last year, Recode reported this. I believe Reuters did as well. They sent a letter to NHTSA saying, we need to sort this out. And that's where this
new ruling or this temporary ruling came from.
Yeah. And I think that Google knew all along that they were going to get to that point. They have a huge lobbying organization, and that industry in general, I think, is very convinced that they can get around any of those restrictions.
Not just Silicon Valley, though. I mean, it's some of the traditional auto manufacturers have been assuming that as well. I mean, like, that's why when I went out last year to see Daimler's self-driving big rig, I mean, they went to one of the only states that would let them basically develop and test that, and they just sort of like...
But big difference there is that they are very careful to tell you that you still need a truck driver, right? They were very careful about that.
But I think half of that is coming from not wanting to offend the truck driving base.
Agreed. But I do think in talking with GM and Ford as well, and Toyota, some of these other big automakers, legacy automakers, I think that they are taking a much more measured approach to how they think about this stuff. Yeah. They are thinking of it in terms of, a lot of it is very pragmatic. They're just trying to push the liability as far off their plate as they possibly can, with the exception of Volvo, who says they'll take full responsibility. So they are saying, look, at the end of the day, the responsibility falls on the driver to make sure the car doesn't drive off the road or into another car, regardless of what the computer is doing or thinks it's doing. And then you have Tesla, just like Google, which is like, we're just going to deploy this in beta. We're just going to push this to every car overnight. You now have your car can drive itself. It's in beta. Just be careful. And then a week later,
We see like all of these videos of people
exactly.
just, like,
yep.
almost crashing into the side of a highway. It's like
exactly.
You can't tell people, oh, hey, we're going to give you this software that like will totally jeopardize your life. Just like keep your hands on the wheel.
It's actually strange to me that they didn't get more pushback on that. Because that's insane. I love that. I love the way that they approach software in those cars and what they're trying to do with a lot of that stuff, and especially with the semi-autonomous stuff that they're rolling out to the Model S. But and as someone who wants to buy a Model 3 probably as his next car, which we should talk about next, I love that idea. But I also think that is really crazy that you can only assume so much in like how people are going to treat your technology, but
I think it gets at a very deep rift between the legacy auto industry and the new auto industry, where the new auto industry coming from tech is used to the mindset of, it's an iterative process of improving the software over time. You're just pushing software updates as you need, and that's how we're going to do it. And then but when you get to a car, it becomes a matter of life and death.
Yeah, it's funny because it sounds very reminiscent of what Musk does with his rockets too. With each new rocket, we found out that they were kind of changing things around for each launch.
Or even testing things. Like it came out in the biography about him that they would often load up some rockets with like competing technologies, stuff that they were building in-house, so that they could, gather that data back after a launch and then go to suppliers and say, hey, look, like your thing did worse than our thing that we built in-house. Like, can we get it for cheaper, or et cetera? Like they do a lot of that stuff.
But no one's riding on his rockets yet.
Well, yeah.
Someday, right?
Someday. So
what I really want to know about this,
away with that.
Obviously this is like temporary. Google's not talking about it, all this stuff. But this sort of ruling from the NHTSA, does I don't, like you said, I don't think it changes how people approach this technology, at least in Silicon Valley, but does it speed up the timeline? Like everybody keeps talking about 10 years out or 20 years out, and they have like sort of different guesses on when we might get Ubers that are autonomous or Lyfts that are autonomous, or commercial production cars that are autonomous. There's like different timelines for all those. It all starts about 10 years out from now. Does this change that timeline, though?
Well, you have three different variables that are pulling on one another. You have the regulatory issues, you have the liability issues, and you have the technological issues. Mm-hmm. And if you'd asked me that question a year ago, I would have said it's regulatory. That's going to be the long pull, because they have so much to figure out and they don't know what they're doing and blah blah blah, and they're doing it on a state-by-state basis, which is insane. Mm-hmm. And then if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said it's probably going to be the liability issue. Like no one has figured out like who is responsible when a self-driving car crashes. There's no sign that it's going to be solved anytime soon. Now I think it's actually coming full circle back to the technology of it, because Secretary Fox, U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary, is pushing very hard on trying to standardize this stuff. Mm-hmm. He's trying very hard to harmonize it across states, which was an enormous concern, and he seems to be pulling on all the right threads to make that happen. On the liability side, still a lot to figure out there, but Volvo has, like I mentioned before, has come out and said, we will take responsibility if our cars crash.
And that just seems like what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the first domino to fall in that respect.
So it's going to be the companies.
Yeah. Well, if Volvo's precedent ends up spreading, then yeah.
What would be the other option in terms of who would
no
be
one
liable?
no one really knows.
That makes sense.
Well, I think that the assumption for a long time, and maybe the assumption still with some automakers, is that if as long as you have someone sitting in what is traditionally the driver's seat, even if the car is controlling itself and the car gets into a crash, it's that person's fault, because they should have seen the crash is going to happen and take control back. Yeah. And I think that there are still companies who are hoping that's how it plays out.
There's just no way it can go that way, because like when the technology moves forward a couple more steps, people who are in that position, if there are even still like wheels and pedals there for them to take back over, are going to more and more believe that the computer should be able to protect them from whatever they see on like incoming. Yep. And even if they eventually were going to take over and try and avoid it at the last minute, like that hesitation caused by knowing the technology is there is like enough to, I mean, you just can't blame the person in that
These things
situation.
happen so quickly. I mean, there's no way.
It seems like it would be way safer to have a computer making that decision.
Well, and we've already
decide so fast.
This has already happened IRL. We had the company Cruise, I think is the name of the company. They were testing their aftermarket self-driving solution on a Nissan Leaf in San Francisco. We wrote about this in San Francisco, and in the process of transitioning control from the computer to the driver, the car crashed, and it was ruled to be the driver's fault. I think it sideswiped a parked car or something.
Well, it's like in the millions of miles that Google's self-driving cars have driven so far, the only handful of like 15 or 16 accidents I think that have happened have all been human error related.
Yeah.
Well, not just human error, but the other driver's fault.
Right.
Also.
Yeah.
But isn't that what Google said?
Yeah, but
is it true?
They can't really dodge the report.
Yeah, I don't think there's. Yeah, I mean, like if you think about the logistics of it, it would be very hard for them to lie out of that because
That's
there
true.
would be insurance issues and like it
People
would come
could find
out.
it. Yeah.
And on top of that, they definitely started self-reporting that stuff, which like you're right to question it, but they also are self-reporting it and attaching like the police reports and all this other. It's not just them saying like, no, trust us. It's like they actually come back.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think happens first? All 50 states allow some. Right now, we have what? Nevada, California,
Florida,
and there's one more, right? 4. There's 4 states that allow the testing of self-driving cars on public roads.
Yeah. Well, explicitly yes,
Yeah.
but then there's a broad gray area with other states like Texas,
Right, where you can test in Austin and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. All right, but that it shows like how slow this is rolling out because that's just testing, let alone like allowing it to be. So what do you think happens first? That sort of regulation spreads to all 50 states, or marijuana is legalized in all 50 states?
That's it. The race is on because you have Colorado and Washington, right? Washington D.C. That's a very good point. Not a question I'd considered before. They may actually happen. They may happen in lockstep because. As more drivers get high, the more they need to rely on computers to get where they're going safely, right?
Soon everyone's just going to be smoking weed in their driverless cars.
Yeah.
It picks you up from the airport.
It'll just be fog in cars.
It's like a Bob Marley branded weed branded car. The last time I was on the Vergecast, we went down this weird road at CES about how once all this stuff is happening, all the self-driving cars and like Uber and Lyft are self-driving, it's all just going to be branded. It's going to be, I can pay $10 for the ride from the airport in a self-driving Lyft, or I could pay $5 for like the CBS network wrapped one, and like I get the Big Bang Theory blasted in my face the entire ride from the airport to the
There is no amount of money CBS could pay me to have
to watch
Big Bang Theory blasted in my face.
But if you could,
okay, but if it's like $5 from JFK home,
yeah, it's surge pricing right now, surge pricing. But if you want to ride in like the TBS like Conan O'Brien car, it won't be surge pricing.
I mean, the Conan O'Brien car wouldn't be terrible. Right?
It's only clips of Andy Richter.
No, hey, Andy Richter is from Illinois.
Sorry, I like Andy Richter.
Guy. He's okay.
It's Seth Rogen.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that could be.
It's just James Franco reading his poetry.
James Franco is a self-driving car. Sorry.
If James Franco is watching the Vergecast and he hears that will be a movie in like 12 months. Yeah. James Franco James Franco in James Franco as a self-driving car, directed by James Franco, produced by James Franco.
Direct to Hulu.
Spring Breakers 2, James Franco
Hype check self-driving cars.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, these are softball hype checks.
Yeah, this is the easiest hype checks.
I'm not a big fan of self-driving cars. I like driving cars because
I do too.
Right? It's a nice feeling.
I feel a little torn.
Control.
I would like a Minority Report kind of universe.
Or iRobot.
Yeah, where like he had the option of the steering wheel coming down when he was done.
Honestly, do you want other people driving cars? Like, I get that you want to drive a car,
but
I don't want anybody else driving their own car on me.
No, this is exactly.
It would be so much safer.
This is exactly it. The more I've made the trip from my home in upstate New York to, like ever since I started going to college in Long Island, I've been down in the city. And I've been making that 6-hour trip for like my entire life. And the more I make that trip, the more I realize how awful the drivers are around me. And the more I'm like, wow, I dodged like 7 bullets on this drive home or on this drive back to New York. And every time I get, especially big rigs especially, but also just like regular passenger cars. And every time I make the drive, I get to where I'm going, either home or back here. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of ready for it.
So yeah, in terms of hype check though, maybe 5
what's the
out of 10?
The current level? Like, because self-driving cars right now are like
I can agree with
pretty
that.
lame.
Yeah.
So I'll give it like I'll agree with that 5.
I wouldn't say they're lame. They're just not
potential.
mainstream
So,
just yet.
Yeah.
There are some cases that you may want the car to drive you, but at the same time,
well, I think the happy middle ground, in my opinion, is that we are reaching the point where in the next, I think, 5 to 10 years max, cars are going to be virtually uncrashable. Like, they may not be self-driving, but it will not be possible for you to crash one. Volvo's already almost there. They have this system called City Safety that I think is standard in all their vehicles now, or is about to be, where below, I think it's 30 miles an hour, like, you basically can't crash it. Like, if you try to steer it into something, it'll just be like, nope. And like... So, I mean, like...
We saw this trend at Detroit, at the Detroit Auto Show, where it's like, that kind of technology, I mean, just basic like collision avoidance and stuff, but even that kind of technology, which is really important, is almost an afterthought when you talk to these automakers. Obviously at Detroit, they're like a lot of those companies were still going after sort of traditional, like it's a V8, it's a V12. Like, I mean, they're pumping out like more traditional, like sexy auto specs and stuff.
We did spend like an hour in the back seat of a Rolls-Royce Dawn. Yeah.
but like it's so commonplace now that like these cars are having that stuff built in that they're almost forgetting about it. Like it was always like an afterthought. Like what was it? The Lincoln Continental was like the only presentation when they announced that car that was like technology first. Car interior, like engine, all that stuff second.
Do we have any statistics on how has anything changed, or has this not been implemented widely enough, like these kind of anti-crash measures?
Yeah, if you look at the stats over the last decade, when I think stability control became required by law, there's a broad trend toward lower crashes per million miles driven. Per mile driven, whatever the unit measure is. And there was this made news recently, there was a slight uptick in the past year. No one really knows why. A very popular theory is that people are playing with their smartphones. But when you look at the uptick in the context of how much the crash rate has gone down in the last decade, it's still pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
This is why I'm really excited about what Tesla is doing. I mean, all these other car companies are building in this sort of safety. But that's like, I'm of the mindset of I don't really want an internal combustion engine anymore. I don't really care how cheap gas gets. Like, I just don't, there's too much on the back end of how that gas gets to my car as far as like harming the environment. And I'm ready for an electric car. And
they have to kill elephants for every gallon of gas.
Yeah, I just don't have the time to wait for the elephant to get into my car. So this is why I'm really excited about the Model 3. And I think we should talk about that right now, because we finally found out that on March 31st, we already knew like in March-ish.
We knew March 2016.
That Tesla's next car was going to be unveiled.
Yep.
But now we know March 31st.
Last day.
Yeah, the last, I mean, it's like,
It was like when SpaceX returned to flight. It was like the week before Christmas.
Right, yeah. If Musk is anything, he is reliably inconsistent. And it's like, of course, they're going to like push it to the very end of when he was trying to say he was going to announce this car. And so they're going to reveal this car. But then we also
don't even know what reveal means.
How much. Yeah. Oh, God, he's so frustrating.
Yeah, and on the earnings call yesterday, he was literally like, I haven't decided how much of the car I'm going to show. I don't know whether I should just show it or like hold some parts close to the vest.
If they're going to be taking pre-orders on that day, they have to show it. Like, you can't just
But in fairness, they could just flash like the headlight of the car and they would still get 1 million pre-orders.
They would, but that's really, really shitty. I mean, they're not going to do like a Faraday Future at CES and show like a concept car. They're going to show like they're going to have the car. It's going to be.
It'll probably be. My guess is that it'll be a concept version of the car. I don't think it will be production metal. Maybe it will. But I think if you look at the Model X and the Model S, they showed designs that were very close to the production design well before the car actually came out.
But did they start taking pre-orders?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The Model X, they've been taking pre-orders since the 1800s, and it still isn't shipping in volume. So I think the business model, as like annoying as it is, works well for them, and people are responding to it. So I
think as long as they're able to sustain it, I like the way that they're treating their business. But obviously the question is like whether or not they can sustain it until this car comes out, because everything really hinges on the Model 3. I mean, like the Model X, the Model S, everything has been almost not a diversion, but like it's not even really groundwork as much as it is groundswell for the Model 3.
Yeah.
Where like they were trying to get people interested in the idea of an electric car. Like the Roadster was like, hey, we can make a really sexy car and it'll be electric and it'll have crazy range and it'll be really fast. No one will be able to afford it.
Right.
The Model S is like a much bigger step down from that, still way out of everybody's price range.
Yeah.
But like a normal looking sedan that has really great range, is really fast enough to beat like Lamborghinis off the line, and is ready to. By the way, congratulations on launching your Sick Lambo show on
Chris.
Snapchat.
Snapchat, Verge. Thanks to Kirsten for producing that.
Yes, look for that next week. I hope you get big enough that you have people ripping it and putting it on YouTube, like DJ Khaled's Snapchat.
Yes.
We're like, oh, you missed Sick Lambo this week? Oh, we got you. It's on YouTube.
Well, then I'll tell those people you played yourself.
Yeah. But then we had the Model X. I mean, it's like we've gone through this winnowing of like bringing things down to more affordable, and now there's going to be this big jump to the Model 3, which is supposed to cost $35,000 before
tax.
Any tax incentives, and the federal government in this country will give you $7,500 back if you buy an electric car, and then your state will give you differing amounts up to as high as like $6,000 if you live in like Colorado and stuff. So you could theoretically get the Model 3 for $25,000 depending on where you live.
Okay, so I'm someone who hasn't owned a car in 6 years now. Mm-hmm. How has this changed? Is it feasible to actually have an electric car? Like,
Yes.
What is the infrastructure like for that?
Yeah, so a couple of very important things have happened. One is that 2016 is the first year, and 2017 in earnest, where electric cars with practical range are becoming affordable. We're seeing that with the Chevy Bolt, and then we're going to see that with the Model 3 in theory. Mm-hmm. The other important thing that has happened is there has been this explosion of level 2 chargers, which are like the standard fast chargers that you see in parking garages.
Like fill up in like 20 or 30 minutes.
No,
charger, right?
no.
No.
Level 2 is like 4 hours or something.
Okay.
And then
Tesla's supercharger is 20.
Superchargers. So Tesla has done a fantastic job of building out that supercharger network with the idea that you can take a reasonable cross-country trip and hit superchargers along the way, get lunch. It's like a half hour fill up, and then you're good to go. It's 80% half an hour, right?
So, question, Chris. Are all the Teslas, can they take superchargers? Because I know some of them can't, right?
Well, so supercharging at one time was an option on the Model S, I believe.
It wasn't?
I believe it was an option where you could spec a Model S without supercharging support. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Okay.
I think that all Model S's currently sold have supercharging.
They need that to be standard.
They do.
There's no way that they can survive without it.
And there is, by the way, because this is true in every single industry on the planet, there's a spec war for fast charging.
Of course.
There's supercharging, which is proprietary to Tesla, and then there's DC fast charging, and there's another one called CHAdeMO, which is only used by the Nissan Leaf, I believe. But it's technically a standard, but in the U.S., the only real car that people own that use CHAdeMO is the Leaf. DC fast charging is being supported by basically everybody else who is in Tesla, GM, BMW, Volkswagen. So this is going to become more and more of an issue.
And do they have ways to find these chargers in the cars themselves? Or
Yes. So the Model S has rolled out... in a software update last year, they rolled out a system where it basically communicates to you as you drive whether you're getting into an iffy, like if your range is low enough so that it's going to be difficult for you to get to a charger in time, which is kind of clever. Like you don't have to be actively navigating to a place. You can just be driving and there's an indicator. It's like, you might want to like look for a charger now.
Yeah.
So that's in that car. But I think basically every EV sold, including the Bolt, and I think even the Volt, they all have some sort of integration in the navigation system that makes it easier to find charging stations.
And the thing is, like the charger network is a huge deal for sure, and Tesla's got really big ambitions on building that out even further than it already has, which is already been pretty extensive. But the Model 3 can get you close to, depending on the circumstances, about 300 miles on a charge, right?
The Model 3?
Or Model S, sorry.
Oh, Model S is, yeah, 275-ish, I think.
Right.
And Model 3 is going to be 200.
We don't know yet. Yeah, it'll be over 200, but we don't know.
Model S, the P85 would get around 275.
Yeah.
I don't think it can go up to 300. It's doable if you're not constantly like going 80 miles per hour. But.
Yeah.
And Musk has said on a call last year when he announced the P90, he said that he expects the battery technology to improve literally every year. So it wouldn't surprise me if he rolled out a P95 this year and then a P100 the year after that. You know, it just keeps getting incrementally better.
Yeah, along with the software updates, like his big thing for Tesla is that like if you buy a Model S today and I buy one in 2 weeks, like mine pretty like assuredly will be better, like
incrementally, but yes,
incrementally, but like if not just because of the software and I won't have to download it, but because of things like that, where like if they do finally hit that breakthrough at a gigafactory where they can come up with new sets of batteries,
it'll be like
they'll
getting
just
a new phone.
build it in.
Yeah.
You'll need to get the new Tesla in 2 years.
the Tesla 6S.
Yeah.
But like even 200, say the Model 3 is 200 miles. I hope more than that, but it's at least 200 miles. Like that's plenty. That is plenty for basically.
Because how much do you know, Chris? The P70 or
there's no P70. There's a 70.
No, the 70.
Yeah.
What was the mileage on that? Like
I had it was over 200. I don't know the exact
but
number.
it wasn't going over 250 though, right?
I don't think so. No.
Right.
But I think there's a psychological barrier for people where once you get above 200, it feels comfortable, like it feels practical. Like the Leaf, the first generation Leaf, when it first launched, it was 55 or 60
something really low.
It's like,
and even now it's only up to 85. Right?
Yeah, and that's true with the e-Golf too. And it's like
just still enough for most people on a daily
car.
basis.
Sure, but it doesn't give you that buffer, that safety buffer to make you feel like comfortable. And it also doesn't match, and this is very important for people psychologically, it doesn't match the range of a gasoline car.
No, it doesn't.
What's the average range of a gasoline car?
200 to 400. Yeah, I mean, just depends on the tank and the car. But
I have a kind of like maybe stupid, simple question. How long does it take to charge a battery on a Tesla? So like you're saying it'll go like 300 miles, but how long?
So I drove a Tesla for like several weeks when I was living in California. I would take it at a supercharger. It would take an hour from
that's to 100%, right?
Yeah, tend to they don't want you to actually charge it to 100%. They want you to go through like 85, 90. Yeah,
because the problem with superchargers now is that like as they might have them in like every place that you can charge up, but like there's only one or two there, and there's this like war of like everybody fighting for the supercharger.
So when I went to a supercharger, there was a ton of people. I mean, California, there are a ton of people driving electric cars. And most of them are driving Teslas.
Yeah. And so you were in for weight. Yeah, I remember when I test drove Model S in California when it first came out. Basically, there was a supercharger in the name of the town escapes me, south of San Francisco. I can't remember, but anyway, I had to wait, and this was like there were like 10 Model S's on the road at this point.
But but to answer Kirsten's question, you can plug it in overnight, right?
Yes.
Like in your garage.
Yeah, and if you want to, you can even plug it into a regular wall outlet. It'll just take forever to charge, but you can do that. So we need to wrap up in a minute. I want to go through a few quick things.
Yeah, we got some
that you should all be aware of. There's a new Twitter timeline, which is opt-in right now. Is that right?
Yeah, but I haven't been prompted.
I
Does anybody have
got
it
it this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you get prompted. You have to go into your settings.
I didn't see it.
It'll be a toggle. Yeah, mine didn't show up until this morning.
That's weird.
Is it good or bad?
Yeah, what's different
Honestly,
about it?
I really like it. It's basically until you pull down for the first time, it'll give you like algorithmic stuff. But then if you go back to the top of your feed and pull down, it goes back to reverse chrono order.
It sounds like a more expanded version of the sort of while you were away that they were running, right?
It's just while you were away without the while you were away like little tab.
Which I'm totally fine with.
And it's
just
I
like that.
More while you're away as well. So it's more than just like.
But then once you refresh it,
he's the while you're away to like things that you guys post from like hours ago.
My while you're away is always Chris Ziegler or Casey Newton. It's like only them, maybe Dan.
Mine is all Nicola Fumo.
Yeah.
Today was just like 6 of her tweets. It was great.
I will say it's like vaguely unsettling when someone faves a tweet that's like 8 hours old. You're like, what circumstance led you to be looking at my tweet from 8 hours ago?
I was searching through your feed.
Yeah.
It's like miles away from like going into someone's Instagram and liking one photo from like 5 months ago.
Yes.
That's like
is true.
That's like a whole different level of thirst.
This is true. Next, we should mention that there are rumors, I think Wall Street Journal reported this, of a Google-developed VR headset. And the idea is that this would sit somewhere between Gear VR, which requires a phone, and like a full-fledged like Rift setup, right, or Vive. This is in between where it's self-contained.
Hyped.
To me, it sounds like the Goldilocks VR headset.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Awesome. Yes.
I bought a Gear VR for a couple weeks ago. I've been using a Note 5 pretty exclusively since December, and I finally bought the Gear VR. And it definitely has its limitations, but it's nothing beats how easy it is to use.
Yeah.
How often do you use it? Is it just for games?
Well, so that's what's weird about it. Like the experience is great, and you don't have to charge it. Like, I mean, there's so many things about it that it's light, and that's great. What's weird is like I never feel comfortable using it in the apartment because like my girlfriend's always there, and so it's like you get that weird social moment of like, do I want to use this like while she's in the room or like even while she's in the next room? Like I usually just wait, and like if I find myself alone with a couple hours, it's like, all right, let's pop into VR, see what's new. So it's like
Let's check into Matrix for a few minutes.
Yeah, it's like really kind of weird. Like, we'll have to get used to it someday.
Yeah, so we'll see. Maybe at I/O this will be a thing. The VR headset, we'll see.
That would be cool. I would love to see them roll that out there.
Yeah, that would be a good thing for that. We mentioned before, but you have to know this by now. There's a new Kanye West album out. How could you not know this?
Also,
presumably it's live streaming right now.
Yeah, we have a theory that Kanye knew about the gravitational waves announcement before it came out, because he announced his album was gonna drop today.
Yeah,
and it was originally gonna be called Waves.
Yes.
Like what? And then on Monday, the LEGO collaboration, which discovered the waves, said they were going to announce something big on Thursday.
And then next thing you know, it's not called Waves anymore.
I know. Well, he changed the name like Monday
embargo.
morning. Yeah. He knew something.
Kanye is jacked into the scientific community more than we could possibly know.
So the title of Kanye's album is now called
The Life of Pablo.
Life of Pablo.
Pablo.
It was TLOP.
TLOP.
And we were speculating what it might mean.
Yeah. And now we know.
The love of physics.
And if you follow Sean O'Kane on Twitter, SOKane1, he is posting rapidly a bunch of fake The Life of Pablo album covers with different words.
I made one for Andy, our transportation reporter.
Andy
and then I made another joke one because I always make, every time there's like a big Twitter.
You got to make jokes in threes.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Can
and
I
did.
one?
Sure, but that will make it 4.
Oh. No, I don't want to ruin the comedic symmetry.
I don't know. I would have to figure something out. I don't know.
One more quick thing. New York Fashion Week is in the midst of starting. It's going on for the next week, I think. Our own Kwame Opam is going to be at some of the events around this, but also you should follow our sister site, rack.com. They are, of course, going to be covering the heck out of that. And there are some tech implications here. Fitbit announced a partnership with a fashion house earlier this week. There was an Epson event where they're printing textiles. Kwame was at that. And there are things going on. You'll want to check it out.
There's like
things are happening.
There's no better interdisciplinary thirst than the tech industry and the fashion industry. Like both of them want to be the other so badly.
Yes.
It's like, it's amazing.
It is a very thirsty collaboration. And on that note,
wait, one more before we go. MTV News is coming back. That just broke while we were doing the show.
If Kurt Loder is not involved, I don't care.
Exactly.
Is Kurt Loder
involved? That's the right answer.
Okay, Kirsten, Mark, why don't you give us some social channels?
Social channels? Well, as we mentioned, we had a new Snapchat show this week with Chris, his grand
Sick
return.
Lambos.
It was so good.
Yeah, so you should follow The Verge on Snapchat. We're just Verge on Snapchat.
We used to be The Real Verge, and then we got really cool.
We're still just as real.
Yep.
We're still real.
Yeah.
You can just find us under
We're
Verge.
as real as gravitational waves.
Yes.
And then let's see. Well, they should subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, so it's youtube.com/The Verge. Got tons of awesome videos coming soon.
That's true, including one. I don't want to give too much away, but one I saw that's coming next week that I'm very excited about. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Wow.
There is some really crazy. The amount of stuff that's come
We've
out
got
from the video
content coming.
team.
Yeah, we have content. Hashtag content.
Since even before CES, it's been crazy.
We're Verge on Twitter. Is that right? Why am I saying is that right? Of course it's right. I know what we are on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah,
At Verge.
At Verge.
And then what are your Twitter handles? You both have Twitter handles. You're both on the Twitters.
Yes,
We are both on the Twitters. I'm
Twitter
at
sphere.
Flux in Time.
And then I'm at Hey Mark L.
And then Loren, you are.
I'm just pretty simple. Loren Grush. Loren.
No underscore.
No.
Sean has the most complicated. I don't know what.
I've been.
It's like an old
Twitter.
AOL username.
Well, it was consistent. It was consistent with like everything I used in like the old web, and now it's just followed me forever. And I've been trying to get Twitter. If you're listening, I want either at O'Kane. Never mind. I've been DMing the Twitter account. You got me. I'm SOKane1.
SOKane1.
Hopefully not for long.
I am Zed Power. And that's it. Thanks for watching.
Bye.